As the figures draw closer, everyone finally realizes it's not just one person flying back, but several, and leading the group is none other than Sar. Saya, meanwhile, freezes for a second, then said it's the missing people returning. He wipes the sweat off his forehead, noting that he almost got scared to death, but then mutters that it's a shame Sar didn't just die out there. Meanwhile, Lu Sheng immediately sensed something's off. He notices a strange aura clinging to them, and more importantly, those weird threads hovering above their heads, like invisible strings. And it became painfully obvious. This is that guy's doing. He quickly concludes that the guy in the shadows finally lost patience and decided to act directly, though still hiding in the dark. Lu Sheng mentally remarks that this kind of person is a total coward, the type that never shows his face. At the same time, the two officers snap into action. They clearly see the problem too, drawing their weapons on instinct. One grips a spear, the other a pair of daggers, positioning themselves front and back. The whole thing reminds Lu Sheng of those guys who hide in the back, pulling strings and controlling everything from the shadows. Even though the ones returning are technically teammates, nobody actually rushes forward to greet them. Anyone who's made it to this level isn't stupid. Pretty much everyone can tell the atmosphere is way too unsettling. In fact, several people instinctively step back, staring at Sar and his group with open caution. Sar breaks the silence, casually explaining that they just left the team for a bit, and asks if pulling weapons is really necessary. His tone sounds relaxed, as if this whole thing is no big deal. However, the fat guy clearly disagrees. He comments that whether it's serious or not isn't Sar's call, and says that leaving the team without permission needs a clear explanation. Otherwise, being sent back would be the lightest punishment. That's when Sar's expression shifts slightly. He admits that leaving the team was their fault, then explains it was because he discovered a massive colony of beasts. According to him, it's a perfect hunting ground packed with crystal cores. He further explains that if he had reported it beforehand, the officers would have never agreed, which is why they acted on their own. The female officer finds his explanation strange, but before she can respond, someone behind Sar steps in and tells her Sar is telling the truth. He notes that the whole reason they entered this place was to grow stronger, and crystal cores are the fastest way to do that, so he doesn't think they did anything wrong. Another person joins in, reasoning that even if they split off temporarily, everyone made it back safely in the end. For a moment, the female officer can't decide. She turns to the fat officer and asks for his opinion. Before he can answer, Sar speaks again. He waves his hand, clearly believing actions speak louder than words. The next second, the bracelet on his wrist lights up, forming a small vortex as a massive pile of crystal cores spills onto the ground. He adds that this is their gesture of apology. The entire group freezes. Sar then tells them this is only half of what they gained on this trip, and they're willing to share all of it with everyone. In exchange, he asks that the officers allow them back into the team and drop the matter entirely. Saya stares at the mountain of crystal cores on the ground, stunned, noting that there's already this many, and this is only half. Some people even start thinking Sar must have dug up a whole ass grave to get this many crystal cores. Meanwhile, Tungsten stays much calmer. He first notes how terrifying the power boost would be if someone fully absorbed all these cores, and not to mention the officers already mentioned, there were secret methods to offset the side effects, making the cores even more desirable. But not everyone shares the same level of composure, and quite a few of them is already inching forward. Greed is basically written all over their faces. The moment they realize these cores might be shared with everyone, several people immediately turn around and begin asking the officers to show mercy. The fat officer quickly notices what Sar is trying to do here. He realizes Sar is using the entire team as leverage, which only confirms his suspicion that this guy isn't acting out of kindness. Meanwhile, our boy finds it surprising that Sar, for some reason, is still putting on the act. However, he stays patient, waiting to see what kind of game they are trying to play. Soon after, the two officers put away their weapons and slowly descended. Sar steps forward as well, saying that as long as the officers agree, he'll offer additional thanks once they return to base. He then moves closer to the fat officer, lowers his voice, and tells him that he's also willing to share the coordinates of that beast colony. The two officers exchanged a glance, and they gave each other a small nod. Sar assumes that means approval. He claps his hands, about to say something else, but suddenly gets cut off. The fat officer's voice turns noticeably cold as he remarks that Sar seems to have become unusually polite after stepping out for a bit. He admits that while he doesn't know Sar very well, he clearly remembers that with Sar's personality, there's no way he'd normally address them as officers, let alone casually hand over such a massive pile of crystal cores to share with everyone. To him, Sar's change is way too drastic. Being stared at like that makes Sar's expression shift immediately. He tries to come up with more excuses, saying stuff like how he's reformed and changed, then ask what he's trying to imply. The fat officer notes that Sar's argument does make some sense, so he says he's willing to believe him at least for now. Sar instantly looks relieved, though he looked like he had had enough. However, the fat officer then followed up saying that whether he is truly trustworthy will have to be personally verified once Lord Skeleton Blade arrives. He then adds that when the time comes, both of them will speak up on Sar's behalf, so there's no need to worry. Hearing this, Sar's face darkens instantly. If one listens closely, one can even hear his teeth grinding. He clenches his fist as killing intent surges out of him. The people behind him also begin moving closer, saying the officers are being too heartless. At that point, someone behind Sar completely drops the act. One of them remarks that he already said talking was pointless, and they should have just attacked instead of wasting time. Another adds that with their current strength, they could openly massacre everyone here without any issue. Sar snaps back at them, saying their master liked to do things this way, and asks what he's supposed to do about that. Right after saying this, he suddenly charges towards the female officer, saying how he's been fed up with her bullshit. The two officers instinctively draw their weapons again, but by the time they react, Sar is already right in front of them. With a mischievous grin, he launches his attack. The girl looks completely stunned as a massive blast erupts, visible from miles away. Both officers retreat in a flash, barely dodging it, but what shocks them even more is realizing Sar now has 5 rule galaxies fused into his body. The fat officer immediately points out that Sar used to only have 3. Now, with this level of power, he admits that the two of them aren't his match anymore. Seeing their reactions, Sar laughs and tells the others to join in and give them a proper show. The moment he finishes speaking, the rest charge forward. The closest guy raises his weapon to counterattack, only for it to snap in half instantly. The strike follows through, cutting him down in one clean motion. At that point, everyone finally realizes this isn't just about Sar, but rather every single one of them has gotten stronger. These people who were once completely average in the team are now carrying multiple rule galaxies as well. Even though there are only 8 of them, they charge in like wolves among sheep, instantly overwhelming the entire group. Even when several people gang up on one, none of them can block a single hit. When one teammate gets sent flying past him, Saya nearly jumps out of his skin. He stares at the scene in disbelief and remarks that these guys must have had Viagra or something, because somehow they've all reached Sar's strength before he disappeared. Lu Sheng speaks up at that moment and asks Saya if he still hasn't figured it out yet. He notes that these people are no longer the ones who left earlier, and he means that literally. Tungsten immediately adds that he feels an extremely unpleasant aura coming off them, which surprises Lu Sheng a bit. He even thinks to himself that Tungsten has a sharper sense than expected. Saya starts panicking and asks if Lu Sheng is saying these people are imposters. Clearly, he still doesn't get it, so Lu Sheng explains it anyway. He tells him the people themselves haven't changed, but they're no longer their own masters anymore. In other words, it's like they signed their lives away. They're not the same anymore. Suddenly, Lu Sheng notices something else. As he focuses on the battlefield, he spots a faint black shadow tugging at both sides of the fight. It's the kind of thing you can only see with extreme concentration. From its presence alone, it feels eerily similar to the black shadow he once sensed in an underwater cavern back on Earth. Still, he's not sure whether that thing is also watching him. Meanwhile, the two officers are going all out just to barely hold Sar back. They're the only ones who can even manage that. Everyone else is completely helpless against the remaining 7, getting utterly crushed. Sar keeps mocking them, saying they're ridiculously weak, while the rest of the team gets absolutely destroyed. After knocking the 2 officers away, Sar suddenly reaches out and grabs one guy by the neck. The fat officer screams in desperation, telling Sar to stop. At that point, the man is already foaming at the mouth, and no matter how hard he tries, he simply can't pry Sar's fingers loose. Sar just smiles and notes that there's actually no real conflict between them, and there's no need to fight like this. He loosens his grip slightly and asks the man why he entered the outer space battlefield in the first place. The man trembles as he answers. He came to grow stronger. Sar bursts into laughter and says exactly, that's everyone's goal. Since they're all here to become stronger, and the opportunity is right in front of them, why refuse it? With that, he lets go, dropping the man to the ground. A pile of crystal cores spills out in front of him, and Sar tells him to take as many as he wants. He notes they're all his, as long as he's willing to join them. He then picks up one of the crystal cores and pushes it straight to the man's mouth. The man freezes for a split second, clearly shocked, but then takes it anyway. He's just about to say he agrees when a furious shout cuts him off, calling him an idiot. When they turned around, they saw that the fat officer was clutching his shattered ribs, forcing himself upright through the pain. He asks the man if he even understands what he's agreeing to before nodding along so easily. He questions whether there's such a thing as free in this world and tells him to actually use his brain. He then adds that in this place, almost every mistake can be forgiven, except one that is becoming a beast's lackey. The last few words practically come out as a roar as he asks Sar if he really won't regret this. That shout snaps everyone out of it. The people who were just moments away from being swayed immediately come back to their senses and hurriedly distance themselves from Sar. Sar's veins bulge as rage floods his face. He coldly comments on how those two are unbelievably annoying. The next second, his eyes turn blood red, and a chilling grin spreads across his face, saying that he's already stopped pretending to be human. Saya doesn't even know what word to use for this situation anymore, but he genuinely can't understand how someone can betray the human race like this. Sar, however, doesn't think he's done anything wrong. He keeps flaunting his power, showing everyone just how strong he is now. In his mind, without joining them, how could anyone ever reach this level? He raises one hand, and a wave of space-twisting energy shoots toward the two officers. In the next instant, the sound of bones snapping echoes through the air. To everyone's surprise, the strange energy clung to their arms actually started to twist and break both of their arms. Without hesitating, the two officers immediately sever their own arms to stop whatever effect is spreading. Even in such a miserable state, they don't back down. Instead, they glare at Sar and mock him, saying that no matter how strong he is, he's still nothing more than a beast's watchdog. They point out that with Sar's talent, he could have reached this level sooner or later on his own, even having the potential to break into the 13th level or even the 14th level. But that's none of his concern anymore, because he had just ended up being a worthless lackey. And moreover, he'll never break past his current level for the rest of his life. So is he smart? Or just painfully stupid? That hits Sar right where it hurts. Saya never misses a chance to pile on, so he jumps in as well, mocking Sar by saying everyone here is a once-in-a-generational talent from their own star sectors, all with limitless futures ahead of them. He asks why anyone would trade that away for short-term power and eternal infamy as a beast's lackey. He further notes that any commander-level beast caps at level 13 anyway, so how could it possibly let its subordinates surpass it? The ridicule keeps coming to the point where even Lu Sheng can't help but chuckle. The rest of the group quickly follows Saya's lead, and the atmosphere shifts completely. Surrounded by laughter and mockery, Sar finally snaps. Completely enraged, he screams that he's going to kill everyone.